Hello, everybody. Peace and blessings be upon you. Welcome to the Secret Sex Lives of Muslim Women podcast. I'm your host, Salma Hindy. You may know me from my viral clip on TikTok where I called myself a hojabi and I received my first ever death threat. This podcast is near and dear to my heart. Okay, I've been trying to start this podcast over the past 6 years and I finally emptied out my bank account and we're recording the first episode. Super excited to be doing this. So my intention for this podcast is I want to be a safe space and a learning space for Muslim women around the world. A little bit about my background. I grew up in a really conservative Muslim community in Toronto, Canada. I grew up in Mississauga. The community I come from, I went to Islamic school my whole life. Never once learned about sex education. This was how I found out about sex. This is my real story. So first time I ever heard about it, I was 7 years old and my mother was telling me the story of Sittina Maryam, which is Mary, okay, mother of Jesus, who Muslims believe in. And she was trying to explain to me how high stakes it was that this woman got pregnant and she wasn't married. So my mom was like, if you get pregnant without being married, that means you did something very bad. And I was like, okay, very bad, like what? She's like, just something very bad. I was like, okay, like gossiping? She was like, yeah, something like that. So then I never gossiped for the next 3 years, okay? Until I was in the 4th grade. And like I mentioned, I went to Islamic school my whole life. My mother was my principal. My parents owned the school. Here's the thing about Islamic school. Every now and then, there will be like one really rebellious, corrupted child from public school whose parents put them in Islamic school as like a spiritual rehab. But what ends up happening is like that student ends up corrupting the rest of us because we're like ripe for the corruption. I still remember it. There was like this Palestinian girl and she comes into class. I came in late that day and I remember I was like super irritated and all these kids come up to me and they're like, Salma, this girl is spreading a rumor or basically saying that all of our parents at one point in time have been naked with each other and they had to do this to have us and it's something called sex. I was like, keep my parents' name out of your fucking mouth, okay? How dare you say that about them? I was like, maybe your parents did that. Okay, maybe your parents did that. Mine did not. I was so mad. I was like, I can't believe you guys are talking shit about my parents. Like, they're really good Muslims. How could you say that about them? And then my oldest sister came to pick me up from school and I was like 40-year-old smoker energy coming into the car. I was like, oh, you'll never believe what I heard today. She's like, what? I was like, apparently this girl's like going around telling everyone that our parents were naked with each other. And something called sex. I was like, isn't that crazy? And then my sister goes, she's just quiet. I was like, say so, Angie, say something. And she goes, you're gonna have to ask your parents about that. And my jaw dropped. Okay, my jaw dropped. And then I found out what sex really was. I just remember thinking like, well, finally, at least now I can gossip. You know what I mean? Yeah, then after that, my entire sex education consisted of exchanging notes with people on the playground. Like my brother and I would like run around and hear people talk and then we would come together and exchange notes. He would come to me and be like, I heard you can do it from behind. And I was like, oh, how? And so that was literally my sex education. Then I guess I learned things from TV, from movies, and fast forward, now I'm in my early 30s and I go to Egypt a lot and I see they don't know much over there, like sexual health and getting checked for STDs or wearing condoms. I realized that this is a very big gap. We need this resource. We need to know about sex, not just the scientific textbook version, but also what is happening out on these streets. What is happening out on these streets? Because even if we're not talking about sex, guess what? It's happening. It's happening whether you like it or not. It's happening whether you know about it or not. I'm a very curious person. I feel like I learn best from personal stories, from anecdotes, from people's lived experiences, from their advice. And so I really want to create this container. I want to be a vessel to my community, to the people I love most, to the people who have the most questions but are the most shy to ask. So welcome to the Secret Sex Lives of Muslim Women. So this pilot episode is going to be completely solo. It's going to be me talking about my sexual journey, my story. My intention is to kind of share my personal story so that maybe you see yourself in me, maybe you relate to me, maybe you learn something from me. And then at the end, I'm going to put out a call out for guests and explain what we're looking for on this podcast, because this podcast is going to be very guest centered. It's going to be about real Muslim women who have real sex lives, who are going to come on the podcast and talk to us. You can be anonymous. You can cover your face, your voice, your name for your own safety reasons. Of course, if you're not, that would be really cool. But Salma, who my entire career is talking about my sex life on stage and publicly, I understand the risks and the stakes involved with your identity, your brand, if you do publicly speak about your sex life as a Muslim woman. So I just want to make sure you feel safe. My goal is not to expose you. My goal is to share your story with others. Yeah, so briefly going to talk about my childhood, which honestly, there was not much that happened there. I have like a vague memory of kind of like sexually exploring with one of my siblings when we were very young, and we were like in the bathroom and I think we were like, I don't know, like smelling each other's butts or something like that. And I remember my mom, we had no idea what we were doing. We were really young. And I remember my mom walked in and she would just like, she handled it honestly the best way that any parent could have handled it. She laughed. She didn't take it seriously. She was like, "What are you guys doing?" And then they kind of like clothed us and took us apart, and then they were just like, "Don't do that again." But I remember that was like my first ever, I guess, curiosity about the human body and about somebody else's body. But then after that, like, I never talked to boys growing up. I never noticed them, honestly, till I was maybe like 9. I didn't care about them at all. So I never talked to boys, never masturbated. I didn't even know what that was. But I remember like I would start to have crushes on boys. I think my first ever crush was when I was 10 years old, or 9 years old, actually. Oh my God. My first crush was when I was 9 years old. Okay, I talk about this on stage. I was in the 4th grade and I had my first ever crush on this Palestinian dude named Abdullah. He was a hunk, okay, aka the only boy in my entire class who hit puberty. So all the girls had eyes on him. And Abdullah and his 2 older brothers, they were like less than a year apart. They were all so good looking. The 3 of them together were like the Muslim Jonas brothers. They lined us all up in the gym. And they were like, "Abdullah, all of these girls have a crush on you. Choose one." And at this point, I was the only girl in my entire class in hijab, okay? Because I started wearing it when I was 7. So when they lined us up, it was literally like Emperor's New Groove. It was like perfect hair, dress, and then me in a tent. You know what I mean? Like, my mom was not styling me. I faced a lot of neglect growing up. I was not pleasing to look at all. And so he didn't choose me, okay? He chose Roba, another Palestinian, which honestly, good for them, keeping it in the family. But he broke my fucking heart, okay? And in that moment, I remember I decided life is not for me. Life is for others. I'll just love men from afar. So that's my villain origin story. It took a lot for me to break out of that. Like, I only actually brought it up in therapy maybe like 3 years ago or something. And because it became a core belief of mine, that rejection. So after I overcame that like 3 years ago, that's when I would say I finally got back onto the dating market. But the problem is I'm like mentally 33, but romantically 9 years old, because that's the last time I considered boys as like a real option. But after that, basically what I decided to do was to crush on guys from afar. So every year or every other year, I would have a really intense crush on someone. I would just like settle into them. I would be like, this person's my imaginary husband, not even a boyfriend, okay? Imaginary husband. I'm loyal to him. I'm going to do everything to try and please him and get his attention. Meanwhile, we interact like once a year. Like on my birthday, he'll be like, "Happy birthday." And I'll be like, but it's enough to keep me going. You know what I mean? I developed this fantasy addiction, which honestly got me through my entire life. Growing up in a really traumatic, abusive household, like a prison, never being allowed to go out. Like, I remember every year there used to be a Muslim Youth of North America summer camp that would happen. Worst week of my fucking life, okay? Everybody in Mississauga who went to Minna camp, okay? Worst week of my fucking life. All of a sudden, an entire week in the summer, it would be like blackout on Facebook. Everybody would be gone. No posts, no word, nothing. And then a week later, everybody comes back like flooding Facebook with pictures and albums and pranks and people riding canoes and flipping them over and bonfires and people singing and everyone adding each other on Facebook and commenting and blah, blah, blah. And then the guy that I had a crush on, I'd be like, oh my God, who's like commenting on his stuff? What's going on? I would feel so alone. And so throughout that entire week, when I wouldn't hear from them, when I wouldn't hear from my friends because they were all camping and my dad said me and my brother couldn't go, I would just, and my mom would ask me to like help her vacuum or something. I would be standing there vacuuming and like in fantasy, like, I wonder what he's doing right now. I wonder what my crush is doing right now. He's probably having fun. He's probably this and that. He's probably traveling. He's probably going camping, like things that I was not allowed to do. And when I first started dating, actually, a lot of my interest in men was I was mostly interested in their life. I was mostly interested in the life they were living. Like, wow, they're so independent. Wow, they make their own money. They get to travel without asking their parents. They get to date. They get to go out. Like, they get to do whatever they want. They're so cool. But in reality, they're like so fucking lame. It's just like the fact that they had that freedom and that independence in their life that was really sexually attractive to me. And so the fantasy addiction, that's something that stayed with me and that I just became aware of, honestly, last year. I'll like talk about that in a bit. But after I started that, I got rejected in the 4th grade. And then I started this fantasy addiction where I would, I wasn't allowed to do anything. So I'm always fantasizing about guys and how they're having fun and how I wish I was with them having fun. And then I had a really, really abusive caretaker of mine. I don't even want to say who he is to me and my family because I don't want to expose him explicitly yet. But he married into my family and he truly, truly, truly was my own personal, emotional, psychological abuser growing up. He used to call me fat, dark, ugly, like 24/7. This man absolutely destroyed my self-esteem. And he used to call me Salmzilla, okay, like as in I'm as fat and ugly as Godzilla. And then my like defense mechanism or my coping mechanism was to embrace his insults so that I still please him because all I wanted deep down was his approval. So I literally made my Skype ID. You guys remember Skype on RIP, but I made my Skype ID Salmzilla. And if you know anything about Skype, you can never change your ID. You can literally never change your ID. So it's like his insult followed me until all the way till university. I really internalized all of his beliefs about me. I thought I was really ugly. I self-deprecated all the time. My humor in high school was very similar to Mindy Kaling in The Office. Very self-deprecating, very much throwing myself under the bus, calling myself fat and ugly. And I really believed that. And I remember some guys would be interested in me and I would straight up like say to them like, but I'm ugly and fat and whatever. And I would see their face changing as they placed me in the friend zone. And so I stayed in the friend zone basically my whole life. I was always in the friend zone. I was the girl that guys would come to and they'd be like, yo, who's your friend? Yo, can you introduce us? I hated it. I hated it so much. Like I wanted to be sexualized, but the truth was I had never sexualized myself. It was not safe for me to ever sexualize myself. I come from a family, especially my father, always had this fear constantly. He would always police what I was wearing if my curves were ever showing. Also, the Muslim community is extra harsh on curvy, thicker girls because it's harder to hide your curves. But if you're stick thin and you wear a abaya, obviously nothing's going to show. But then when you have curves, it's like, oh, I'm aroused by you. And the onus is on you to not make me aroused by you. It's really unfair. Whereas a skinny girl, they're like, you're so modest. I lived that life because I was overweight my whole life. I was constantly scrutinized. Like, your butt is so big. Oh my God, I do have a big butt, honestly. But I used to get punished for it. Like it's like it's my fault. I used to be told like, it's so big, your butt is so big, you have to cover it. And when I say cover it, I mean like you have to somehow wear a tent so that I can't even see an outline in any way, shape, or form. that you have curves. And then obviously you're a young woman, you're trying to draw in potential suitors to get married and secure your future. And so you want to kind of wear a dress that's like cinched at the waist or whatever. You want to kind of show your figure, but then you get reprimanded for that. So yeah, my dad was always afraid that I would get like assaulted or something like that. So he would always be like, cover yourself, don't wear heels, don't draw attention to yourself, pretty much be invisible. And so I did that, which was really crazy though, because it's like, to be a good Muslim woman, you have to be invisible. But then I'm going to these events where I'm hoping someone's going to see me from across the room and walk up to me and be like, you, give me your father's number. You look so modest that I have to wife you up right now. I don't even know if you have an ass. And that's so attractive to me. So it was kind of an impossible upbringing. My sisters got married in their early 20s and I was expected to do the same. I remember my sisters got married in their late teens. My oldest sister got married when she was 19 and my other one, I think also. I received my first ever suitor when I was 20 years old. My mom was acting as if I was expired. She's like, you're 2 years behind your sister. You're not going to be a prodigy. I'm literally a child. I'm literally a child bride. I would say my dad brought me like 3 or 4 really serious suitors where we like sat down with them and their families in the living room. They tried to get us to talk, blah, blah, blah. And all I can say is my nervous system was in fight or flight mode. I hated the whole fucking arrangement. I hated the whole idea. I could never see myself as a sexual being. So the fact that another person was sexually attracted to me made me want to vomit, made me want to literally fight them. It made me hate my family. It made me feel like I was under a lot of pressure and the walls were closing in. And it really contributed to my binge eating disorder, which I later developed. But my binge eating also comes from my dieting, which I had started in high school at age 14 because, I really wanted to be a wife. I really wanted to attract someone. So I started dieting from 14 all the way till I was 30. And fun fact, from the beginning of me dieting till the end, I was a net result of plus 80 pounds. Okay? Dieting does not work. It actually disconnects you from your body. It actually does the opposite of what your body needs to release weight or energetic blockages or whatever the fuck your body's holding on to. Now we're in high school. When I was 15 years old, I think I tried masturbating for the first time, but I didn't know what it was. I just was touching myself down there. I was like, oh my God, it feels really great. And it's not even hot on because there's nobody else here. And then I told a couple of people in my family about it, some girls, and they were like, oh, like they were trying to explain to me what an orgasm was. They were like, if you touch yourself down there and it feels good, that's an orgasm. I was like, oh my God, I think I did that one time. And then another one of those girls was like, no, but if you do it alone, that's called masturbation and that's haram. Like, that's not halal. And I was like, okay, so are we supposed to do it together? Like, I'm confused. No, I was like, oh my God, thank you so much for telling me. I'm never going to do it again. And I didn't until the pandemic started. And guys, it literally took a team of therapists to convince me. They're like, we really think you should start touching yourself. Like, we really think you should start sexually exploring. It was after I had gotten into my first and only real relationship. I had like a halal boyfriend. I have to say that because he's married and he has a son now, and I'm sure he's watching absolutely every single thing I'm doing. But he would die if I accused him of doing something with me that he didn't do publicly. So I want to make sure I say he was my halal boyfriend. We never did anything. Okay, he never even saw my hair. I think I experienced my first ever sexual awakening with him, where it's like I really wanted to have sex with someone. I'd never experienced that before. I'd never been attracted to someone who was also attracted to me. I didn't know what to do about it, so I kept putting pressure on him to get married to me because I was like, that's the only way that I can have sex with you. And then after that relationship crashed and burned after like a year, I was devastated. I was broken. I also had a lot of sexual shame that he really triggered in me. I already had it, but he made it a lot worse. I sent him like a sexy photo of my neck one time with a necklace that he bought me for my birthday. And I would explicitly say to him like things that I wanted to do with him or that I wanted him to do to my body, which was so innocent back then. But for him, it was like he literally felt like I was the whore of darkness. Like I was literally Shaitan's daughter. Do you know what I mean? He was so disgusted by me. And I remember experiencing my first ever suicidal thought. It wasn't, oh, I want to kill myself. It was, I don't deserve to be alive. What I have done in terms of expressing my sexual desires to this man was so haram that I don't deserve to live. And then at that point I was like, bitch, we got to go to therapy. We literally got to start going to therapy, because I just knew when I started going to therapy, I just knew this is not specific to me being a Muslim. This feeling of loneliness, of shame, of desperation and depression and loss is universal. I just knew that. And while there was a voice in my head telling me like, I don't deserve to live, there was another voice in my head that was like, this is not it. I want you to seek help outside of your community for the first time. Put being Muslim, your entire identity, down on a shelf and just go talk to someone. So that's what I did. I went to therapy and I started, for the first time ever, processing my childhood, processing my relationship. Most of it was spent on my relationship, at least in the first year. I was talking to multiple therapists. Literally, I was like, at one point I was seeing 3 therapists at the same time. I was like, watch me make therapy unhealthy. Okay, I'm going to do it. And all of the therapists basically told me, you only loved your ex so much. Like 99% of why you loved your ex and you wanted to marry him was because he was the only sexual outlet that you ever saw possible in your life. And they would tell me, why don't you touch yourself? Why don't you masturbate? And I would say, no, it's haram. I want to experience pleasure only with my husband. All this like Jane Austen shit. My therapists were like, you have to know your own body. Like, how are you even going to have good sex if you don't even know what makes you orgasm, if you don't even explore the sensitive parts of your own body? And then I got 2 in my head. I tried to really masturbate. I couldn't do it. I hated it. I would read books like the Vagina Bible, Come As You Are. I would look at diagrams trying to find the clitoris. I did not know where the clitoris was. Okay, I was worse than most men. I thought like the top of the labia was the clitoris. And then I kept trying and putting pressure on myself, and I hated it and I hated it. And it wasn't until literally a month before the pandemic, I was in Vancouver shooting my first ever taping, Just for Laughs, a new wave of stand-up in Canada. They put us up in like a really fancy hotel, and I was by myself and I was feeling really light. And I told myself, I was in my hotel bed, and I told myself, I was like, don't look at a diagram. Don't try to do anything. Just feel yourself, feel your body, follow the sensation. And then I did, and I found my clitoris and I started masturbating, and then I stopped right before I climaxed because I was like, that was so fucking overwhelming. I was like, holy shit, I didn't even know that was a feature in my body. And then after that, I got a vibrator and, you know, started really exploring. I had a friend of mine who was a little bit ahead of me. She's also a Muslim woman who was a little bit ahead of me in her sexual journey. And so she was telling me like what vibrator to get, what kind of lube, what kind of like toy cleaner, etc. Like we were talking to each other on the day-to-day about that kind of stuff. And yeah, when I started masturbating, it really opened up my eyes to so much. I've been trying to start this podcast for 6 years now. And I actually recorded a pilot episode before with a guest, but the format was very different. I was very different. I was still a virgin. I was still in hijab. And I spoke to this woman, and she told me all about her story with vaginismus, how she had it and she couldn't have sex. Vaginismus is basically a psychological condition that manifests physically, where you have like a tight pelvic floor and you have like a clinically tight vagina, which sounds exciting, but it's not. It's like impossible to insert anything inside of it. Even a tampon, you cannot insert it. It feels like you're trying to insert it into a brick wall. You can actually injure a penis also if you tried to shove it into a clinically tight / closed vagina. And that woman was telling me her experience. She was actually in New York, and she told me that she did a surgery. Apparently vaginismus most highly reported in Orthodox Jewish women in New York. And a lot of women who have religious trauma, sexual shame, or come from really conservative communities have vaginismus. I personally know a lot of friends and siblings of friends who have it. I didn't know that I had it at the time. Okay, so this woman is telling me about her experience with vaginismus, and I'm so interested. I want to know, blah, blah, blah. And she told me how she went and did this surgery with a doctor who's not practicing anymore to like relax the muscle. And then even after that, it was still tight and painful. And he gave her these dilators, which are like medically prescribed dildos, and told her you have to work on this basically for the whole year, where you insert it and you have to breathe and like time your breath with contracting and releasing your vagina, etc. I heard this woman's story. I thought it was fine. I thought I did not have vaginismus, but I didn't know because I had never had a sexual experience. And then I had my first ever sexual experience maybe like a year later, end of 2020. And it was with one of my best friends. I'd been best friends with her for years. We would talk on the phone all the time. She's a girl. She would always kind of like grope my body or whatever, but we would just make jokes like, oh, this is halal because I'm not a boy. So weird. And then one day she slept over at my place and she was like, okay, I'm going to do something like you can't laugh. And then all of a sudden she just started kissing me down my chest. At one point she started fingering me. And it was so fucking painful. It was like a searing pain. It was like fire, okay? And I told her, I was like, it hurts. And then she stopped. I was like, okay, I wonder if I have it. I got the dilators myself. I tried to put them in, the smallest one. It didn't work. And then I was already going to a pelvic floor physiotherapist at the time because I had injured my back. And she was the only person who like diagnosed it correctly from everybody that I'd gone to. So while I was with her and she was giving me exercises for my back, I told her, can we also check if I had vaginismus? She literally looks and she goes, oh yeah, classic case vaginismus. I was like, oh, me? And yeah, so that's how I found out that I had vaginismus. It was honestly from this podcast and then the experiences that I had right after. And then I had to do what all the girlies did. I got the medically prescribed dildos, the dilators. I worked through them for a whole year. They told me if you can get the smallest one in, you can get the biggest one in. It's just like a matter of breathing more, taking more time. And now I have vaginismus and I am sexually active and I know how. I've actually been celibate for over a year, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I'm not in like a celibacy prison or anything. Like I could have sex if I wanted to today. And if I did, this is how I would handle having sex with vaginismus. First of all, I cannot have penetrative sex with someone the first session, the first like sexual physical hookup session. I have to slowly develop trust for the person, for their body. I have to trust that they can make my body feel good and they will listen to me when I tell them to stop. I have to test out consent first to feel safe. And then after that, ideally, if there's like a little bit of time, when I say a little bit of time, I mean like a week, 2 weeks, your girl is horny, okay? Then I would be down to have sex with them again. But then when we're actually having sex, I need lube, at least in the beginning, because what it is it's like the hole is very, very tight. Like in the beginning, before I lost my virginity, I tried to lose it a few times and it's like men could not even find the hole. Like they would try and put it in my asshole. And I was like, that's the wrong hole because they literally could not find the opening. And then when they did find the opening and they would shove it in, my vagina would like spit their dick out. Okay. Because I didn't want it. I didn't want them. So when I finally lost my virginity, it was under that circumstance where I had hooked up with the guy and he made me orgasm and I really liked him and whatever, but he never tried to stick his dick inside my vagina until a couple of months later when I went back and then I wanted to have sex with him. And so he was wearing a condom. That's what I always do. Condom. And I always put lube. Okay. Because it still is my first few times. I'm still new to it. It is very tight and you kind of need all the help you can get, at least for the insertion. And then I tell them to go very, very slow. And I take a lot of breathing breaks. So like I'll breathe while they're inserting because it's only the insertion that is difficult. So while they're inserting, I'll breathe. I'll tell them to rub my clitoris at the same time. I'm like, you have to distract her. That's the only way you're getting in. So they'll rub my clitoris. They have lube on their dick and then they like slowly insert while I breathe. And sometimes I'll even tell them like if they're like halfway inside of me, I'll be like, okay, depending on how big the dick is. Honestly, just my luck. I get the biggest dicks around me. I know this is a good problem to have, but for me it's stressful because I'm like, now we're gonna have to fit this fucking truck inside of me. So if it's like a big dick, like halfway through I'll be like, okay, don't do anything. Let's just like breathe. And then after that, they can continue all the way till it's inside. But then once it's inside, I get very aroused by my G-spot. I get very aroused by my cervix being stimulated, and I get more and more wet, and I get more and more expansive. And then it's fine after that. So it's really just the beginning. And I find that I really need a sexual partner who's understanding, who's patient, who genuinely is prioritizing the safety and well-being of my body than their fucking ego. Yeah, that's just for all the girlies who have vaginismus. You can be a whore if you want. You can be a hoe. But you just have to kind of learn how to live with it. Before I lost my actual virginity, I took my hijab off. I had my first kiss like 2 weeks before turning 30. It was in a club in Cancun. It was also with a girl, actually. She came up to me and she said something really sexy in Spanish. And I was like, what? And then she was like, ugh. And then she was like, I want you to kiss me. And then I did, and it was amazing and magical. And then I went in to kiss her again, and then this guy like tried to join the kiss. I was like, ugh, can't we have anything? Anyways, so that was my first kiss. And then that night I kissed like a few other people. I kind of had a hoe phase for a bit before I actually lost my virginity. I would just like get fingered by like multiple people on the dance floor. I like dropped literally $1,300 once at a strip club. I got a private room with a stripper. I was so ashamed to ever tell anybody this, by the way. I tried to have a one night stand once. The guy's brain was literally this big. Okay. I was like, where's that gonna go? In me? And then I remember, this was before I like mastered vaginismus. I remember telling him, I was like, just shove it in. Like it's not a real thing. It's in my head. So just shove it in. So he fucking shoves it in, and I tore immediately. He could tell that he hurt me, and I bled all night. And the entire week after, I had a yeast infection. And that was when I realized, I was like, holy shit, my body reacts. My body reacts. Now when men want to sleep with me, I'm like, it's not up to me. It's up to her. You know what I mean? Does she like you? Does she trust you? Because at this point, I have fully surrendered to the fact and accepted that my body has the answers. My body has all the answers. My body has the memories. So my body has more wisdom than my brain does. I've honestly learned so much about myself through vaginismus, through learning if I actually like someone. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm so turned on. And then I'll try to put like the dilator in or whatever dildo, and it'll be so tight and so dry. And I'm like, oh, actually, I'm not in the mood. And then other times I'm very wet or very open. And then that indicates to me that I really like this person, or I really feel safe with them, or whatever. After I lost my virginity, though, I will say that it opened up an entire portal of grief. It really triggered my abandonment wounds, my rejection wounds. It triggered my intense grief of the loss of my family, the loss of my community, the loss of my entire belief system, the loss of just everything that made me, or that I thought was permanent. I started doing a lot of somatic therapy after I lost my virginity. I attended a lot of retreats. I started doing ayahuasca. I'd already done mushrooms at that point, but I really started to like kind of heal from the inside of my womb. And I actually had an ayahuasca ceremony where I asked the plant, why do I have vaginismus? And I found out that somebody in my family had been assaulted sexually, and I had kind of received that trauma from them because I was physically bonded to them. And then I had to purge it. I had to purge it from my womb. So I haven't had sex in 1.5 years now. The last time I had sex, I literally just started talking about this like 2 days ago on stage. The last time I had sex, it was so good that it literally traumatized me, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't know if you guys ever have sex that good where you're like, we need to rethink everything. Okay, I actually am not built for this casual life. And so I still have not really recovered. It's been like 1 year and a couple of months. I think it really just awakened like an ache inside of me where I was like, oh my God, like sex could be this good if I like the person. And then I think personally, my biggest struggle with sex is access to sex. Like, even if you have a sexual partner, even if you're in a relationship, technically you cannot access sex 24/7. Like, that violates the entire system and structure of consent, right? You cannot just summon someone whenever you want and have sex with them. And I think for me, that is my biggest resentment towards sex and intimacy and love and human connection. Is like, I get a little bit, I want to consume them dry. Like, I really relate to that Black Widow spider that sucks the blood out of her partner till he dies. Like, I really relate to that. I've told people that I've loved in the past, I'm not talking just romantic, anything intimate, even like a friendship, I've told them, like, if you let me, I can suck you dry. So I need the boundaries, I need the discipline. But then at the same time, I'm like a 15-year-old horny boy. I'm sitting on like 33 years of repressed sexual energy. I'm like a dam about to burst, okay? I'm like a 15-year-old horny boy in that I want to have sex. If you're gonna have sex with me, now you've opened up Pandora's box. You need to fuck me nonstop for like 2 weeks, okay? Otherwise, don't even try. But at the same time, I'm like a very scared 13-year-old girl who is still afraid of men. First of all, I want to say I started with girls because it was easier. Number one, they have the same body as me. Like, obviously they have different bodies, but like, I know what a vagina is. I feel good around them, and women are not going to kill me. Okay. Chances are a woman is not going to be able to physically overpower me. Whereas men, the smallest man in the world can like throw me across the room with his pinky. Okay, it just is what it is. And then also, I had never seen a dick. I thought there was like hair on the dick. I didn't know what texture it was. I didn't know it was a fucking velvet brick. Okay, I didn't know any of this stuff. And so that's why I found it easier to start with girls. But it's very interesting because all the experiences that I've had with women was covered in so much shame. So much shame. And that's how I know we all have internalized homophobia, and they never wanted to talk about it afterwards, or they treated me like a very toxic masculine man. It just like really put a bad taste in my mouth. And that's why when people ask me like, would you ever date a woman? What I say is, first of all, I do love dick, unfortunately, fortunately, whatever. But also I am attracted to everyone. I think for me, it's more of like an emotional thing. But I have just never come across a healthy woman who wanted to take me out and actually date me without playing any fucking games. So I guess my sexual preference or my sexual orientation is yet to be decided. Whichever gender is going to step up first, basically. It took me a long time to actually trust men and to actually feel like, okay, my body feels safe around them. They're not going to kill me. And then after that, I could open up and actually accept them and let them in. So with my last experience, I think I felt like I gave so much of myself because it's like the most intimate thing I had ever done with anyone. And then afterwards, it was like a very swift cutoff, and it threw me for a loop. I was having physical withdrawals for months afterwards. And then just this past October, so 5 months ago, I was in Egypt and I did ayahuasca, and I purged that guy 6 times from my body. That's how traumatic sex is for me, in that like it's a very deep imprinting on my body. It doesn't not mean anything to me. Like, it does mean a lot. I never told that guy that, by the way, how to freak people out. I'm so intense, by the way. I'm very aware that I'm very intense. I think obviously it comes from my upbringing, but I'm also an extremely sensitive person. I grew up in extremes. And so that's kind of how I learn. I go from one extreme to the other until I find like a happy medium. I think experiencing really good sex and then purging it from my body that intensely possibly are the extremes when it comes to casual dating or when it comes to sex in general. But I took a very big celibacy break that I'm still on, but I think I'm probably coming to the end of it because I wanted to understand better what I wanted, what I needed, and how I can set myself up to have sex in a more emotionally safe way. Because your girl has issues. We have neurological wounds from my previous trauma. So I think I just wanted to kind of set myself up for that. Whereas here, casual dating is honestly lacks any sort of accountability, any sort of care. And I just can't do that. It's not interesting, or it's not appealing to me. It's not even going to engage me. Oh yeah. Also, I have to say that sexual experience was really powerful for me because it was my first time having a penetrative orgasm, as in the guy was inside of me and then I came. And yeah, I'm sorry. If I come with you inside of me, you're my husband. Okay. You have imprinted on me. And if you've seen anything from Twilight, that shit lasts forever, or until you purge it on ayahuasca. And that's what I needed to do. But I got a lot of good content from that experience. Oh yeah, I want to briefly talk about squirting. So I have personally squirted twice in my life. Okay, I was by myself. It felt like I was peeing. I was like, this is kind of really crazy because you have to keep going after the orgasm and you have to really let yourself go. I know there's a lot of myths out there that squirting is hereditary and you can only do it if, I don't know, someone in your family could do it, and only some women are the chosen ones and others are not. Not true. Every single woman is capable of a penetrative orgasm, of a cervical orgasm, of squirting, okay? It's just a matter of genuinely gaining control of your body to be able to surrender, to be able to tap into those parts of your pelvic floor and your womb and your vulva that is going to get you there. I really recommend that you check out this woman named Kim Anami. She has a podcast, the Kim Anami podcast, and she talks all about tantric sex and how you can kind of unlock your potential to be able to have those orgasms. She believes that a cervical orgasm, if you get a cervical orgasm, it basically releases the same chemicals in your body that ecstasy does, but like for 9 or 12 days at a time, like something crazy like that. She believes basically that sex is a very powerful force. It can create a baby. And if you're not using it to create a baby, you can use it to draw in like financial or creative professional opportunities to expand your life. I really love everything she says. And yeah, so I just wanted to shout her out. I want to talk about, 2 more things. Recently, I've been kind of grappling with this question, and I've been around a lot of people who are working through their journey of this question, which is, did something happen to me? And I have this belief or this thought that probably something did happen to me. I think something has happened to probably most children, unfortunately, or a lot of people when they're young and they don't remember. I have a lot of friends who've experienced sexual assault in their youth. 2 friends in particular who are currently piecing together the fact that their fathers on multiple occasions when they were like 5, 6, assaulted them, raped them, we could say R-worded them. And every single time I do ayahuasca, I always purge about rape. Actually, this last time that I did it, I purged about P. Diddy. Okay? I purged about P. Diddy. I thought about him. I started vomiting. I thought about what he did to Usher and what he did to Justin Bieber and how they were really young. And these are celebrities. You know what I mean? What do you think he's done to children who have no names, no families, no status? He probably killed them. He probably killed some kids. So I'm literally like, it's 3:30 a.m., pitch black. I'm in the real mountains of Sinai, okay? I'm on the floor in the sand, and I'm just like thinking of this guy, and I literally go, fuck P. Diddy, and I purge. It was crazy. It was really genuinely crazy. But ever since then, I've been wondering, like, did something happen to me? Why do I always purge about this topic? You know, I also do have vaginismus, and sex is a big deal to me. Like, there is a lot of trauma around it. Could something have happened to me? And then ultimately, I've decided, or I asked my body, and I have come up with the answer, yes, but I don't know what it is. I don't think I'll ever know. And that's so hard for me, okay? Salma, queen of self-awareness, is never going to fucking know what happened to her. That's so damaging to my ego. Like, I'm never going to know. I think deep down, every single woman, every single person who's ever been assaulted or abused when they were a child kind of wants to know who did it when, how many times, where, so that you can go back and kind of kill them for revenge, live out this Jessica Jones fantasy. But I don't think that would help me. Ultimately, I realized that if I find out the story of what happened, I would fixate on that. I would probably talk about it publicly. I would probably focus more on the theatrics around it and my role as a victim. Whereas what my body and my gut is telling me right now is like, I don't want anybody else. Like, just sit with me. Just help me heal from it. Because either way, if I find out what happened or if I don't find out what happened, the healing path is the same, which is I have to help ground my body. And I think that's kind of the last thing that's standing in between me and rejoining the sexual world is I find that right now I outsource my physical grounding, my physical safety to men, to sexual partners. My favorite thing ever in bed, okay? This is so weird. I literally ask men, can you please lie on top of me, especially when we're done, lie on top of me naked and don't do anything. Just literally crush me with your body. Okay, I love that shit. It's like a real life weighted blanket. If I die with a man on top of me, I will die so happy. Well, like, it would be traumatizing to the man, but I would be so happy because I'm like so grounded. I'm like fighting for my life to breathe. It feels so, it's like the ultimate hug, which I never got growing up. So I find that when I taste it, it's like so triggering for me. It really catapults me into a high, and then it's hard because I want that to last forever, literally. And once again, back to the accessing sex or access to sex, it's not up to me, and it's never going to be forever. And so I think that's kind of like where my journey is right now, how to enjoy without over consuming, without literally sucking them dry. Yeah, so that's my entire sex story, my sexual journey. Sex is very sacred to me. I'm very intentional about it. I'm very cautious around it. I practice safety, physical safety, emotional safety as much as possible. I need my heart and my mind engaged also. No matter what, I'm always going to move forward with those beliefs. I think a lot of people, and Kim Anami talks about this, a lot of people in this day and age have junk food sex as opposed to gourmet sex. And I really want to have gourmet sex because I did not come this far just to come this far. Okay, literally. But I am very excited for what's to come. Everybody has always told me that you have the best sex in your 30s. And I'm living out my teens right now in my 30s. So I'm probably going to have the best sex of my life in like my 40s onwards. I've also heard from women that menopause is very freeing because you never have to worry about getting pregnant or anything like that ever again. And so your sex life just gets better and better. And yeah, I'm very excited for that. I feel like there's a whole dimension of life that I'm yet to experience. And I'm really looking forward to this podcast because I can guarantee you almost every single guest that I'm going to bring on is going to be more sexually experienced than me. I am a very recent non-virgin. I just lost my virginity 2 years ago and I've been celibate for the past year and 2 months. So I'm going to be learning so much from you guys. And that brings me to my final point, which is we need guests. This is a call out for guests. The Secret Sex Lives of Muslim Women podcast wants guests all over the world, North America, Europe, the Middle East, who want to tell me about their sex lives or their sexual stories. It could be anything from vaginismus, STDs, cheating, adultery, whether you were cheated on, whether you cheated, porn addictions, if you have it, your partner had it, if you've ever had a partner with erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation. If you are based in New York, we would love to have you inside the studio. If not, we will do a Zoom call. Once again, anonymity is guaranteed if you need it for your safety, so we can cover your face, your name, your voice. We can change that. We're just going to be two girls yapping. Okay. We're just going to be airing our private conversation publicly for other people who really need a sister right now, who really need a best friend that they can seek sexual advice from, because that's very hard to come by in the Muslim community and in most religious communities. Yeah, that's the pod. Thank you so much for listening. I truly emptied out my bank account to shoot this episode. So I hope that you spread the call out far and wide and that we build a community. Thank you. I've been Salma Hindy. Have an amazing day.